The Vanishing of the Le Pérouse Expedition 1785–88. My Story is a Romance. Jean-François de la Galloupe de la Pérouse. As he was bundled through the jeering armed mob filling Paris's newly renamed Place de la Révolution on his way to the guillotine in 1793, you would have thought there to be more sharply pressing matters occupying the mind of condemned Louis XVI. But as the desacralized citizen Louis Capet stood on the scaffold in the dark company of his hangmen, he is said to have turned and asked hopefully, "Is there any news of La Pérouse?" In 1785 it had been 7 years since James Cook's fateful third voyage and the Englishman's work delineating and detailing the unexplored parts of the South Atlantic and Pacific, though extensive, was far from complete. The French Navy had by then recovered from the losses suffered during the 7 Years' War, and with interest kindled by an earlier proposal by a Dutch merchant named William Bolts to explore the North American coast for lucrative fur trading, King Louis had consulted with his Secretary of State of the Navy, the Marquis de Castries, to launch a French mission to build on Cook's progress. The man given command of the expedition was 44-year-old Jean-François de Galloupe de la Pérouse, who had first joined the Naval College at 15 and proved himself a useful navigator and commander in battles with the British. The voyage was to be a circumnavigation of the globe, which would, in true Enlightenment fashion, feature a largely scientific contingent. This included the astronomer and mathematician Joseph Laporte d'Aguillet, the geologist Robert de Lamont, pardon my French pronunciation, sorry, and the botanist Joseph La Martinière, as well as a physicist, 3 naturalists, and 3 illustrators. In total, the 2 ships, La Boussole and La Astrolabe, would carry 225 crew, officers and scientists on a voyage predicted to last 4 years. La Pérouse was an admirer of Cook and emulated his meticulous approach to charting his progress and devotion to the safety of the crew. In preparation, he set his chief engineer, Paul Monneron, to London to learn about Cook's pioneering scurvy prevention methods and to procure navigational equipment, including 2 inclining compasses from the Royal Society used on Cook's voyages. The expedition departed from France on the 1st of August 1785. The ships rounded Cape Horn with little difficulty and, emerging into the Pacific, headed north to Chile. The objectives of the mission were manifold, but the principal ambition was to fill the blanks of Cook's maps, particularly the northwest coast of America, the Pacific coast of Russia, north of the Strait of Tartary, which no European had accurately traced, as well as Melanesia and the general Oceania region northeast of Australia. But of course, there were also the motives of trade and political expansion. Fur trapping and whaling contacts were to be made, scientific collections enriched, and allies for future colonial cooperation secured. After Chile, La Pérouse and his men made for Easter Island and then Hawaii, where they became the first Europeans to set foot on the island of Maui. Next, they went to Alaska, from where they launched a nearly 4-month journey, carefully recording the North American coastline on their journey south to California. As the first non-Spanish visitors to the region since Francis Drake in 1579, they noted critically the treatment of the natives at the hands of Spanish missionaries and conclusively dispelled, among other misconceptions, the persistent European belief that California was an island, which had been marked as such on maps from the early 17th century. From there they sailed across the Pacific in 100 days, landing at Macau in East Asia, where they traded Alaskan furs before visiting Manila on their way to the uncharted coast of Korea. From the Kamchatka Peninsula in the Russian Far East, they dispatched their logs, letters, and maps back to France, and on new instructions soon left to head south for Australia's New South Wales to investigate the British settlements. It was a weakened French party that drew into Botany Bay in late January 1788, coincidentally just 4 days after the first group of British convicts had arrived. A stop in the Navigator Islands, now Samoa, had seen them attacked by natives. 12 of La Pérouse's men had been killed, with 20 more wounded. The British offered a courteous reception, and the French spent 6 weeks recuperating at the colony. In March 1788, having sent the latest batch of records home to France, La Pérouse and his men refreshed their water supplies, weighed anchor, and headed for a tour of Oceania. This was the last that was ever seen of them. When La Pérouse failed to return to France in June, as he had confidently predicted, the tardiness seemed out of character, but not a cause for concern. But gradually the alarm began to build. Finally, on 25th September 1791, Rear Admiral Joseph Antoine de Entrecasteaux left France on a search and rescue mission, arriving in the region of what is now known as the Solomon Islands in May 1793, but failed to find a trace of the men. In fact, it was not until 1826 that an Irish sea merchant named Peter Dillon first found solid clues to their fate in the form of a wreckage later identified as that of l'Astrolabe. And not until 2008, nearly 2 centuries of piecing clues together, when 2 French Navy vessels set out to recreate the final leg of La Pérouse's voyage, that the events were finally understood. It emerged that a powerful cyclone had swept up the ships off the coast of the Santa Cruz Islands and hurled them against the reefs, wrecking both ships. Some members of the crew managed to survive the initial destruction and make it to the Vanikoro, the nearest island, where they were slaughtered by the natives. A few others managed to piece together a raft from the remains of l'Astrolabe and set off in a westerly direction, but what happened to them is not known. The bulk of La Pérouse's work, however, survived, thanks to his discipline of routinely sending home what discoveries they had at each point of rest. The ethnographic descriptions of zoological specimens, journals, and detailed cartographic illuminations of the expedition saw the men celebrated as national heroes and were proudly published by the French government as Voyage de la Pérouse autour du monde, La Pérouse's voyage around the world, copies of which were snapped up by a fascinated international readership. So hello everybody, welcome back to Book Time with Elvis with me Mark, and another edition of Off the Shelf. And today's choice, picked at random, is this wonderful book by Edward Brooke Hitching. You can see it there, I'm trying to avoid the glare, called The Golden Atlas. And this is part of a collection I've got, which you can see the others behind me there, and I will probably talk about them at some point when I get round to it. But I absolutely adore these books. They're full of really fascinating bits of information regarding geography, history, and all sorts. Let me just read to you the inside flap, if you don't mind. So, from the author of the international bestseller The Phantom Atlas comes this spectacular history of discovery, illustrated with the rarest and most beautiful maps ever created. And it's true, the book is absolutely jam-packed, full of wonderful, wonderful maps and other images, of course. So, there we go. These are the greatest episodes from a history of exploration, brought to life with the finest collection of antique cartography ever assembled, from ancient Egyptian adventurers, Islamic explorers, and monstrous medieval Chinese fleets, to gold-crazed treasure hunters ransacking the New World and doomed polar voyages swallowed up by the Arctic ice. These are the extraordinary stories of how the world came to be known. Who was the first woman to circumnavigate the world? What is the impossible black tulip? Which famous explorer tried to reach the North Pole by reindeer? Brimming with surprising facts, this fascinating compendium draws on the latest research to weave together the exploits of history's great discoverers with a wealth of rare and previously unpublished maps, paintings, and original photographs sourced from private collections, dealers, and archives all over the world. For those seeking an escape from a globe long since revealed, the Golden Atlas transports you back to a time of darkness and peril, showing how the lines of the modern world came to be drawn and how lives were laid down so that the shadows could be cleared and the detail filled in. And what a fantastic addition as well to August of Adventures. I think I will definitely have to peruse this for some interesting little case studies about the different types of exploration and adventure that went on in the past. So this is it. This is, terrible glare there. This is Edward Brooke Hitching's The Golden Atlas. Fantastic book, highly recommended. Everybody, thank you for watching Off the Shelf, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Do take care. Bye-bye.